I thought it might be helpful now to just run through some questions that I know members would be asking about the changes, simply because the board was keen to have some of these questions answered too. We need to change the Constitution because the world changes. You know, constitutions were often created at a time when communication in Australia was very difficult. So if you lived on the West Coast, you know, or if you lived in Western Australia, etc., it wasn't quite so easy to be in touch with people from the eastern states. So you always had national bodies that had people from all over the country. Now communication is quite a different thing. Also, the world changes. So as the world changes, so do structures need to change. You might have heard the term before, structure follows strategy. So if the strategy needs to change to meet the external environment, so will structures, and not just management structures, board and governance structures as well. Change can be a good thing, it's not to be feared. There's always this concern, aren't we funny when we reside in different states and territories? There's a sense, and I know I come from South Australia, so I come from one of the smaller ones as well, and there's a sense that, oh, those people in Melbourne and those people in Sydney, they don't care about us, etc. But I believe that all of Australia will ultimately have a voice in the proposed changes for the structure of the board, because of the Director Nominations Committee, which is an independent body and is designed to ensure that all aspects of skills and diversity, including region, are represented appropriately on the board. Under the Constitution, or at least the recommendations to you, the committee would comprise of the chair of the board, the current chair of the board, and 2 independent members. And I think that's the important thing. So there's no notion here that it's the board just feathering its own nest and, you know, maybe tapping someone on the shoulder and saying, would you like to join the board because you know that person, or they come from Sydney, or they come from Brisbane or somewhere. Rather, there are these independent individuals who are charged with the responsibility to actually do a skill and diversity gap analysis, and then look at those who wish to seek nomination for election to the board and determine whether they fit that ideal skill and diversity gap analysis, and then put before the membership for election those who most closely fit the necessary skill and diversity gap. I think you'll find that Finsia will be careful to ensure that the independent members of that committee are well known, highly regarded, and without question acting in the best interests, or would be acting in the best interests of Finsia and Finsia's board. I think the changes will make Finsia better because there is this research which shows a direct correlation between the performance of a company and the characteristics of its board. So just as we know good management should produce good outcomes for the company, then we really must accept that a good board functioning well will produce good outcomes for the company, in this case Finsia. And all we can do is base the constitutional change on robust research which would tell us what constitutes a good structure and good composition for the board in order to make the board strong, in order to make the board effective, in order to contribute to the performance of Finsia long term.